G'day and welcome back to the channel. In this session, we'll go through calculating Pokemon attack. Previously, we've covered calculated Pokemon defense, not mandatory session to review before this, although this session will refer back to that session a couple of times generically. Um, Without further ado, so in this article, we will investigate the attack, special attack value. We'll answer the questions attack, what is it? How effective is stacking attack? The alternative to investing in attack? Does attack have diminishing returns? And then we look at the stat point investment return on investment. And we ask what's the optimal attack, special attack combination? The average damage output, and then we'll conclude. And throughout this video, I will leave chapters in the description below if you want to jump ahead or returning viewer. Um, these are the tools required if you want to follow along at home. You can install Anaconda or some other bash type terminal where you can input your Python and then Notepad++. So we've got our Notepad++ and our terminal ready to go. So let's kick into it. Attack. What is it? Both attack and special attack are the values that determine the damage you deal. Through a combination of your attack or special attack stat, the base power of the move, and the opponent's defense or special defense, that's how damage is calculated. So we can pick some example Pokemon to explain the process. So in this example here, we've got Kingambit versus Tyranitar. So for the first part, we will focus on attack versus defense. Thus, we need to calculate Kingambit's attack. So this is the formula. We are math floor, so rounding down is attack stat, which is 135 times the level divided by 100 plus 5, and level being 50 since we're in Pokemon Champions. And then we do the same for Tyranitar's defense, except we put defense in here instead. Then we pick a move. So we'll use Iron Head. Got an 80 base power. It's steel, physical, and 100% accurate. Also has a 30% chance to make the target flinch. So how do we calculate this in Python? So we need, for this scenario, we'll import random math. We'll set the IVs, which are the independent values, which for Pokemon Champions is always set to 31. The level is 50. We calculate a little level modifier. We've got our base power 80. We've got same type attack bonus because Kingambit is steel. Using a steel move, it does 1.5 additional times additional damage. Damage multiplier because Tyranitar is weak to steel. Then we have our random, and this goes back to the website where we talk about the 25 different values that can occur between 85 and, 16 values between 85 and 100. So that's how your damage variability is calculated. Then we do our attack stat from before, our def stat from before, and then we do attack over def to calculate the damage. So we can grab that, we can put it in our notepad, and then it's just Python, and then I've called my file name Pokemon. So we've got that 121, and if I keep doing that, we'll get a different random value for the different damage. And we can see the range of the damage is 108 to 128. So Tyranitar has 175 hit points. So it's a slightly different calculation for hit points. And we use the 100 from before. So we can see this does somewhere between 61.7% damage and 73.1% damage. And this is already part of existing calculators. So I've linked here Pokemon Showdown, which has the champion's damage calc if you want to do manual calculations. And you can see here, this is what the 61.7 and 73.1. And you can see the possible damage amounts here. How do we calculate those? So, and how effective is stacking attack? For now, we'll remove the random and we'll calculate purely based on perfect rolls. If we were to include and increment stat points, how does this impact the damage? So if we grab this, it's very similar to before, but we're adding a while loop. So while attack SPs are less than and equal to 32, we will keep incrementing them and printing that out. So we can grab that and run this. And we can see as we increase our stat points, our damage goes up, but it's not linear. We can see duplicates in the above results, and the duplicates occur because the damage formula rounds down. So multiple consecutive defense stat values can produce the same flawed result. The stat changed, but the damage didn't. So let's adjust our code to include these changes and filter out the duplicates. So if I grab that and go over here, and after we can replace our while loop. So now we're checking previous damage, setting that to 0. And then during our loop, if it's not equal to previous damage, we'll print out the result. So we come over here and we list that. And here you can see at 0 SPs, we do 128. At 30 SPs, we do 156. And then all the different breakpoints are noted in below. So you can see that here. So yeah, if we invest 0 SPs, we do 128 damage. Damage increases at certain points. The first SP immediately pushes the damage to 132. And then it takes a further 3 SPs to reach 134 and so on. So yeah, in this scenario, we can also see it doesn't increase beyond 30. So investing 31, 32 is not going to yield us more damage, assuming Tyranitar doesn't invest anything in defense. And again, this is due to the rounding issue. And if you plot this on a graph, you can see it's not exactly a linear increase. So we've got a block of code here. If you would like to import matplotlib, so we can replace that here. And instead of our print damages, we will plot show. So we can run that, and that should generate our graph. And so we can see damage increases as attack increases. As we increase our SPs, our damage goes up. Again, not 100% linear. The alternative to investing in attack. In the defense document, we discuss the alternative to investing in defense, which is hit points. There's no equivalent stat alternative for attack. There is no other stat that replicates the effect of raising attack or special attack. However, we jump straight to a third option, which is a wide range of items, abilities, and move mechanics can achieve the same end result, which is increasing the damage you deal. So we got type boosting items. So in champions, the equivalent of the type plates are type specific held items, one for each type. So we got fighting, each providing a 1.2 times base power to moves of the matching type. So if you're using a steel move and you're using metal coat, you'll get a 1.2. Charcoal fire, these ones. And so these are all available on the website. If you go to the Pokedex and items, and we can look at type plates. So there you can see the full list of items and what they do. Wow, yeah, what type they increase in damage. So unlike a flat attack investment, these items only boost one type of move. These items boost the base power before defense is applied in the damage formula, making them particularly effective at pushing past damage breakpoints on same type moves. Mega evolution. So mega stones are available for a wider range of Pokemon in champions. Mega evolution frequently provides large attack and special attack increases alongside ability changes, effectively solving the attack investment question by raising the base stat itself. So example, you've got Mega Medicham gains pure power, doubling its effective attack stat entirely. Mega Heracross gains the highest attack base stat in champions, and Mega Alakazam, Mega Chandelure gain the highest special attack values. And we can see that if we go back to the Pokemon, we look at attack. So there's Mega Heracross, and we look at special attack, and there's your Alakazam and Chandelure. Abilities that increase damage. So a number of abilities available in Pokemon Champions multiply damage output directly or conditionally. So we've got like Pure Power doubles the effective stat. Sheer Force boosts the moves with secondary effects by 1.3 by removing those secondary effects. You'll see Adaptability raises the stab multiplier from standard 1.5 to 2. Tough Claws boost contact moves. Sharpness boosts slicing moves. So if you're wanting to have a look, so you've got abilities. So let's have a look at Sharpness as an example. So we've got 3 Pokemon in the format that have sharpness. So we've got Cleaver, Samurott, and Gallade. And they increase slicing moves. So when you go into moves, you can also have a look at the flag and look at slicing. And these are all the moves that are tagged as slicing. Technician boosts moves with 60 base power or less by 1.5. Analytic boosts power when moving last. Reckless boosts recoil moves. Sandforce boosts ground, rock, and steel moves specifically in Sandstorm. So you can see how all these different abilities have different conditions they must meet. The 8 abilities. So we've got Aerolate, Pixelate, Refrigerate, and Dragonize. These convert normal moves to another type and boost them by 1.2. So an example of that, if we go to the generic calculator and we put in our Mega Feraligatr, who has Dragon Eyes, and we look at the double edge, this normally, and we'll go back to have a look at the moves double edge. So we can see this normally has a base power of 120, but because of Dragon Eyes, it increases that base power to 144. Another way you can see that is to remove the Dragon Eyes ability. So you can see that goes to 120. You can also lower the opponent's defense. So reducing the opponent's defense or special defense is mathematically equivalent to raising your own attack. The damage formula uses the ratio attack stat over def stat. So halving their defense doubles your effective damage output. So currently in the format, we've got Screech, which lowers the target's defense by 2. Fake Tears, Metal Sound, and Eerie Pulse all reduce target's special defense by 2. So at -2 stages, the def stat is multiplied by 0.5, which is half. This doubles your effective damage output in a single turn, which can outperform many rounds if you're doing SP investments. One thing to note with stages, only applies to target and it resets when they switch out. So all of the above modifiers apply after the initial base damage calculation. The attack stat breakpoints we identified earlier remain relevant regardless of which modifiers you add on top. It is multiplicative, so you want to increase the base by as much as you can so that when you times by stab, times by super effective, you get a much larger number. Does attack have diminishing returns? Yes. Due to the rounding of the level modifier, base power, and the attack versus defense, at certain points it requires more attack value to increase the damage output against a given defense value, depending on the base power. So again, important, the damage formula always rounds down. This means that investing in attack can occasionally yield the same damage output as the previous stat point. This is what we've been coining as the gap effect. So currently the minimum maximum base stats of in Pokemon is 1 to 255, which is an 8-bit integer. Having a base stat of 1 at level 50 means the lowest stat is 21, and having a base stat of 255 gives you 275 when you apply the value. You can also apply a boosting nature to the stat increase it, and again, that's just another math flaw times 1.1. So the highest stat achievable currently in Pokemon Champions at level 50 with SPs and nature is 272 attack with Heracross Mega and 259 special with Alakazam and Chandelure Mega. So the calculations for attack versus defense are exactly the same as special attack versus special defense. There are a myriad of ways of increasing these values, and some moves use different combinations, but the calculations are always the same. Level modifier, attack versus defense, and the damage. And then all modifiers, like same type attack bonus, effectiveness, abilities, items, terrain, even weather, increase the damage after the initial calculation is performed. Defense will reduce the initial damage value. Different modifiers will change the damage after this is calculated. So let's extend our section 2 logic across all base powers, keeping the same fixed attacker, which is King Gambit and Defender, to see how SP cost per damage tier change with base powers. So we can grab this And in this scenario, we've got a 4 base power loop. So we're checking each base power between 40 and 130 at increments of 5. So we can go to here, we can put that in there, and we can run our script. And here you can see, base power 30. It's, 0 SP to increase the damage, 2, 3, 2, 2, etc., etc. What this looks like summarized is at base power 40, you need about 7 to 8 SPs. So each new damage value costs 7 to 8 SPs at base power 40. And apart from the fact that, lower base powers do less damage, typically we would see, base power 90 or base power 80. So each new damage value costs about 3 to 4 SPs. And as it gets easier, or rather lower, as you go higher in base powers, so you can see at base power 40, we needed about 7 to 8 SPs to increase the damage, compared to, say, at a base power 130 move, we only need about 2 or 3. And that kind of kicks in at about, anything over 100 needs that 2 to 3 SP investment to get a new damage value. So the key finding, as base power increases, the SP cost per damage tier decreases. Lower base powers require more SP investment to gain each additional point of damage. This is a direct consequence of the attack defense stat ratio. With the fixed defender, it takes fewer attack stat increments to push the formula past the next integer boundary when base power is high. The flaw in the core formula is the source of the gaps, not the attack stat. And then, Python ranges work up to the second last value. So in this scenario here, we're going 40 to 130. Doesn't run the 135. Diminishing returns, SP investment, return on investment. So now we know the SP cost per damage tier varies by base power. We can ask a broader question across all possible base offensive stats. How much percentage gain does full SP investment actually provide? So the code below calculates this for every base stat using base power 90 and plots the result with the average gain marked. So we can run this, and I've got a commented out section if you just wanted to save it as a file rather than just rendering it on the screen. That option is available. So we can run this, and we can see our graph here. So on the left, we've got our damage gain, and on the right, we've got our offensive stat, whether that's attack or special attack. And we'll go through this, but essentially what it means is as you have lower lower attack value, you definitely get more of a beneficial gain up until about this point here. So your midpoint is below average. You're getting about 58%, damage increment gains, and then it teeters off as you get to about 80 something. You hit your 30.6%. And then again, it just slows down really. And then, if you get to about 160, you're only getting about 17.9% gain. So again, we'll go through that. We've got the graph there if you just want to admire the picture. So we've essentially got 3 tiers. So the average gain across all base stats is 30.6. This drops below at base 82, which is stat 102 at level 50. So tier 1, we've got up here. So base stat to 1 to 32. The stat value is less than 52. The midpoint gain is about 58%. You get very high return on investment. Every SP invested yields an outsized percentage improvement. Then we've got tier 2, which is your base stat 32 to 82. So that's stat 52 to 102. Your gain is about 30 to 58%. So obviously it starts dropping. This is certainly an above average return on investment. It is, in fact, effective. So an example of this is, say, Superior, which is stat 95. So it gains 44.6% from 0 SPs to modest 32 SPs. And we can have a look at that down the bottom. So we've got Superior here using Energy Ball, base power 90. So at no SPs, our average damage is about 39.78. If we invest our 32 SPs, our average damage is 52.59, so it's up 12.85%. And what's also interesting is if you look at this 32 investment, you get the same average damage increase, 12.87. But see, in this scenario, it's plus 32.3% over the baseline compared to, say, Mega Gengar, who again is getting the same damage gain, but it's only 16.5% versus the baseline. So then we've got our tier 3, which is 82 to 154. So these are Pokemon with stat 102 and 174. They get, the 17.9 to 30%, so it's below average return on investment. And it still helps, but returns are starting to diminish. And then beyond base 154, which is stat 174 plus. So if we were to go and have a look at Pokemon, let's say we have a look at Mega Gengar, who's got special attack 170. If we load this up at level 50, that special attack is actually 190. So then it's a low return on investment because we're only gaining about, 18 something percent. So you got 16.5% there. And then from start to finish, it's a 27.9% gain. So you can see using the 90 base power moves, the damage values below base damage averaged across all 256 possible defenders, not a specific matchup. This just gives a generalized view of offensive output at each investment level. So again, if we were just to look at Superior with 32 Modest, we gain a total of 17.71 damage, which is 44.6% above baseline. Compared to, say, Gengar, if we were to do the same thing, we still get less average damage. So on top, Superior was gaining 17.71, Gengar's gaining 21.73. However, this is 27.9 above our baseline. So key insight is both Pokemon gain almost identical absolute damage from 32 SP investments. The difference is just relative. Superior gains that 32.3% from SP investment alone. Mega Gengar only gains 16.5 because Superior's lower baseline makes each point of damage worth proportionally more. The modest nature adds a further 4.86 for Superior and 8.86 for Gengar. So higher base stats benefit more from nature in absolute terms because it's a 10% of a larger number. And these figures are, again, averaged across all 256 defenders. They represent base damage only, so there's no stab, type effectiveness, or items applied. So then we ask, what's the optimal attack special attack combination? So let's look at a specific scenario. That's meant to say King Gambit holding a life orb against attacking Tyranitar. So again, we're importing our modules as we need. And then we've got our IVs, which will always be 31, our level, which will always be 50. And then, we're doing base power 50, and we'll do a 256 by 256 grid. So again, we can grab all of this. We've got plot show by default, but again, if you want to save fig, you've got that option. I'll just get rid of our last figure, pop this in, go to Python, run our code. It'll generate a large, colorful spreadsheet, as you can see here. So on the left, we've got attack stat 0, and that goes all the way up to our 255. And then on the bottom, we've got our defensive stat going from 0 all the way to 255. So you can see the entry point for attack is pretty similar, around 16, although you're obviously not going to find too many Pokemon who have this low. You're typically looking anywhere above 80 to 90. And you can just see the breakpoints stagger, and they get smaller and smaller as you go higher and higher in attack and defense. So we'll go through the results of that. So there I've included the screenshot. So this is the inverse of the defense matrix from the defense document, and we've flipped the axis. Attack is on X, defense is on Y. The underlying ratio is still the same. Red shells show where an additional attack base stat point produces no new damage value against that defense. Green cells show where it does, and you got that bit of a heat map there on the right. So the green band at low defense values show that attack against weak defenders, almost every attack point produces a new damage value. As defense increases, red becomes more dominant, more attack investment is needed per damage tier. And then we will look at the average damage output. This section calculates the average damage output per SP investment across all possible defenders. Again, we're still using that base stat of 1 to 255. Rather than looking at a specific matchup, this gives a general picture of how effective attack investment is depending on your base attack or special attack. The key question is, does a Pokemon with a high offensive base stat gain more from SP investment than one with a lower offensive base stat using the same move? So again, we're comparing, or in this scenario, we're comparing Mega Gengar, who has that really high special attack, versus something like Beedrill, which has a 90 attack. Again, we're still using base power 80. So in this scenario, again, we've got our same variables. We've got our two examples. We've got our figure size. We've got our for loop. So we're doing a loop based on Mega Gengar and Beedrill. We're checking SP range, and we're going through and calculating what that looks like. So again, if we put that into our notepad and run that, we'll get this, which will show you, Gengar, Mega Gengar starts here. So again, average damage, base power 80 across all defenders. And we've got Beedrill starting here. We can see, a linear increase as, you know, the starting points are different, but the increase is almost identical. So again, if we scroll down, we've got that image included. So the key finding here is Mega Gengar starts at an average 69.5 damage with 0 invested. Beedrill starts at 40.9. Both gain approximately the same absolute damage per SP, which is roughly around 0.36. The raw improvement is nearly identical. The percentage gain differs significantly. So Beedrill gains 28% from full SP investment. Mega Gengar gains 16.5%. So a lower base stat Pokemon will see a larger relative improvement from the same investment. The gap never closes, so Beedrill at 32 SPs, 52.3, still falls well short of Mega Gengar at 0 SPs. So, you look at the end point of Beedrill compared to the start point of Gengar, it's always going to be far apart. But the delta per SP is consistent, about 0.35, because average damage across all defenders scales linearly with the offensive stat. The floor affects average out across the full defender range. This confirms that base attack or special attack stat is the primary determinant of average damage output. SP investment shifts the line upward at a consistent rate, but the starting position is just determined by the base stat, which then defines the ceiling. So in conclusion, these calculations are generic, non-specific generalizations. They are not meant to replace specific calculations. They are just to provide an alternative baseline to those who want to maximize generic damage output or as a starting point for offensive investment. The key takeaways, there are no alternative stats to attack. The only choice is how much to invest and what items or abilities to pair with it. The SP cost to reach each new damage tier is driven by base power. So higher base power moves require fewer SPs per tier. Lower base power requires more. As base power increases, breakpoints become cheaper. Higher base point moves reward attack investment more efficiently. As base power decreases, breakpoints become more expensive. Lower base point moves see less return per SP invested in attack. And items, abilities, and opponents' defense drops can all increase damage output without touching the attack stat. And the breakpoints identified here remain relevant on top of any modifiers applied. So again, whichever approach you take, whether you manually crunch breakpoints for certain base powers, use colorful charts and graphs, or target specific benchmarks, the choice is always yours. And before I wrap up, I'll show you some examples again on the website. If you haven't visited the website, please feel free to check it out. I'll leave the link in the description below. But we'll go through and let's have a look at Beedrill as our example, and we'll use Poison Jab. We'll clear our item. So for this session, we're focusing on these 10 values here. So every time you put a Pokemon and an attack move in, it will calculate the 10 most common values that are going to increment your damage. So you can see here for Poison Jab, in most scenarios, it's not worth investing in 31, 32. You may have a specific scenario where you need to invest 31, 32. But if you're just, drafting a team, taking it straight in to, get a test and feel how it is preferable to use these values. And you can, change that on the bulk damage slider, which one you want to use. But you can see these numbers will change. As an example, if we were to put our type plate poison in, which is the poison barb, our base power now jumps to 96. So if you remember, as we increase our base power, we need less points to invest. And we can see our top 10 has changed. So now in this scenario, it is worth investing 31 because it does see that it increases the damage often enough to recommend it. And then if we were to go to Beedrill Mega, we lose the Poison Barb because we're forced to have Beedriller. And we're back to, so we've got 200 attack here. So again, calculates the top 10. If we were to go back to Beedrill and have a look, and we drop down to 140. So we still see the same increments at the same stages, but as we know, it's just providing less damage because we've got 140 instead of 200. So whether you're reading and watching this to learn about Pokemon stats or Python, I hope you've enjoyed. If you'd like to provide any feedback, comments, or suggestions, feel free to leave it in the comments below. If you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel, and I appreciate your support. Until then, until next time, take care and enjoy. Thank you.